Hey everyone, welcome to So You Want to Be in Ministry. I am so glad to have you here today. My name is Tim. I am incredibly passionate about the church and those that would lead within the church, those that are having a desire to lead within the church, and those that have a desire to follow godly leaders, which is why I started this podcast. And this podcast is all about educating you if you're thinking about jumping into ministry, equipping you if you're already in ministry, and then encouraging you if you're considering jumping out of ministry. And then I also want to empower you if you are somebody that really doesn't have a desire to jump into full-time vocational ministry, but you want to follow godly leaders well. I want to empower you to know what that looks like and to follow godly leaders that you are hearing and seeing through this podcast. I'm looking forward to the episodes that we have coming up, and I look forward to today's episode. So let's jump into it. Well, today we get a real treat. We get to talk to Travis Bowman. I want to start a series to start this year off in 2024, and I'm calling this series Planning a Weekend. And the whole idea behind it is just how do you go through planning a weekend, like any given weekend service? Where does it start? What do you need to navigate throughout the week to get to the landing place? I want you to hear this. There's churches that do a lot more than what we do as a church. There's churches that can't do as much as we do. It's going to be flexible depending on how many staff you have, how many people you have, how many volunteers and leaders you have that are just willing to jump in and do this or have the skills to do this. And so I want you to hear this. In each episode, there's going to be things that you could do today, immediately, no matter what your size is, no matter how many staff you have, no matter how many hours in the day you have. You can pass some of these things off, and every church can do some of these things. And then there's other things that you're going to do, like that you can shoot for them to get to at some point. I want you to hear this. Like my campus, our church, we haven't always been at this point. We had to grow there. We had to develop there. We had to learn how to use different softwares, and there's all kinds of things. We had to learn things. We had to educate ourselves. We had to grow to those places personally and even as a church. So hear this, like don't hear what we're doing and be like, well, I'll never be able to do that. Take the principles that you can apply and apply them. And today we get to talk to Travis Bowman. He is our worship leader. He is specifically on our broadcast campus in our Edwardsville location. But he has been doing this. He's worked directly with me. I was his supervisor for like 4, maybe 5 years. And then we've worked alongside of each other for a total of 7 years. He came right out of college, right into serving underneath me at my campus. It has been an absolute pleasure to watch him grow and mature in his leadership, in his worship leading, and in his relationship with Jesus Christ. I truly have seen him come from like a single young man to a married and husband, father, and a mature leader that I'm excited as a part of our church and leading others. And so let's get into this interview with Travis and hear about how to plan the worship side of a weekend. Well, hey, Travis, glad to have you on the podcast today. Glad we can make this thing work, man.
Yeah, excited to be a part of it. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, so we've worked together for like 7 years.
Yep.
Yeah, we're approaching a decade here, man. So
yeah.
I've gotten to be your supervisor, and now we're much more like, I guess, equals or similar playing field where we're co-laborers working together, accomplishing the same thing on a similar like leadership level, which is kind of cool to see that you've made that jump.
Yeah, it's been just a different world going from one level of leadership to another, but it's been fun to see what God's been able to do with it.
Yeah, I think it's fun to see people grow and see that happen in their lives, which brings us to the conversation we're going to have today, because you have grown in leadership to the point where you oversee our worship department here at Metro. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to bring people into how we plan a weekend in our church. Everybody's going to have different ways that they do it, but I do think there's some similar aspects that you just have to walk through. Like if you want to get to the same place within a church context of worshiping Jesus, you kind of have to do similar things. And so I wanted to ask some of the questions of this, how we get there. And then obviously anybody watching, listening, can take little nuggets of that would help them and be beneficial, and then include it into how they get there. But that being said, what is our goal? Like, what is the goal of our worship department to accomplish every single week when we get into a church service?
Yeah, so we actually have some terminology we use when we talk about worship. We talk about we want to have opportunities for people to engage with God in a transcendent way, in a way that's going to be different than anything else they can get anywhere else. Because and the reality is, in this day and age, you can get entertainment anywhere via YouTube or Spotify or anywhere else. You're going to be able to get that anywhere else way better than anything we could ever hope to provide. You got, Maverick City's got albums out there, Hillsong's got albums out there, and that's going to sound so much better than anything we can provide. But one thing that we have the ability to offer, and our desire and our heartbeat is to offer, is true, authentic, transcendent moments with God. And so one of the things we try and we are desiring to see happen week in and week out is for there to be these, we call them doorways. And what a doorway is as you're kind of going down, you think about a church service being kind of like a journey, a walk down a hallway, as it would be. And throughout that hallway, there are different doorways that are there. And those doorways, on the other side of every single doorway, is God. And God is standing there waiting for you to be able to step through that doorway and engage with him. And our desire and our hope is for us to be able to create those doorways, those moments for people to make the decision to walk through and have an interaction with God.
Yeah, I like that because you can't make somebody interact with God, but you can keep providing multiple opportunities as they walk down the hallway.
Absolutely.
And go, hey, here's another one. Hey, here's another one. Hey,
Yep.
Feel free anytime. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's really cool. So let's start like at the very beginning of a week or a month or a series or something along that lines. And how do you prepare? Like, so just to give people an overview, because this will be kind of the first in this series of planning a service. We do message series. They tend to be like somewhere between 3 and 6 weeks generally, where we will focus on a topic, but we will walk through books of the Bible. Like I know we're doing that this year. We'll do different aspects of that, but that's how you guys kind of get set up. You find out, okay, we're going to do this. When you get that information, where do you go from there? Like, what are some of the meetings and preparations that you do?
Yeah, so kind of our beginning process, we start with our team first. So we start with the scheduling of our team. I typically, on a regularly scheduled basis, I have my team scheduled out at least a month in advance. So like, for January 1st, I will send out the entire month of February's schedule. So the team knows when they're up. That allows them to be able to be flexible and know when they're going to be up, and allows me to be flexible with our team to say, hey, if this person can't do this week, I've got time to be able to adjust the schedule if needed. So that's kind of my starting spot, is to work with our team and figure out when they're going to serve, who's going to be up on a week-to-week basis. From there, we kind of move into the process of getting our worship sets together, our worship services. And we really kind of start that about 2 months out as well. And we start that process kind of just going through what songs we already have in our rotation. And we say, hey, how is this song doing? Are people engaging with this song? And we go through every single song and we talk about them. And we kind of put them on a scale of 1 to 10. So 1 is kind of like, yeah, it's doing terribly. Nobody's even, like, they're falling asleep during this song. 10 is like they're just going nuts. Like every person in the room is shouting, screaming, going crazy with this song, singing along, clapping hands, raising hands, whatever it is. They're engaging in worship in a physical nature and a spiritual nature on a week-to-week basis. So we rank each and every one of those songs that we have in our current rotation.
How many songs do you generally have in a rotation at any given time?
So we typically try to stay anywhere between 20 to 30 on a regular rotation. Now, we do have songs that we term them back pocket, which is these are songs that have done well, but they're not currently in our rotation. And so if there is a specific need on a week-to-week basis or in a service that we think fits really, really well, we can go back and we can grab that song and say, hey, this song is, and our team knows about those songs. They're able to they're not completely lost. Now, we typically don't leave those songs in the back pocket for more than typically about 6 months to a year. If they go beyond that, we move them to what we call a gold status, meaning these are the songs that are doing the absolute best and have been doing really well for a long time. And so we want our people to be able to pull those back from time to time when the moment calls for it.
Yeah, so
So
those gold standard are basically like these are the metro songs. Like
yeah,
if we break it out, our people are just like, yes, again. Like, okay,
yes,
yeah.
yes, yeah.
So what is the purpose of keep limiting it or having back pocket songs? Like, why do you? I guess it would be limiting the amount in a positive way, but why do you do that?
Yeah, so part of our purpose inside of that is really twofold. It's one for our team to be able to consistently stay prepared and know the song. So if there's a moment that we decide, hey, we need to make an adjustment, and we feel like this song fits really well, because we don't have such a massive library of songs. They typically know the songs that we have, and it's a little bit easier for them to be able to slot a song in that's going to work well. The other reason is for our congregation. The easier it is for us to the smaller the list, the easier it is for people to be able to engage on a week to week basis. So if our library was 100 songs, that means more often than not a song. If we decide we're going to use every song once, that means more than likely you're going to have a song play once, maybe twice a year. As opposed to when you shrink that list down, it allows us to play the songs a little more frequently. People get familiar with them, and they're able to engage with them a little bit better.
Yeah, that's good. All right, what other meetings? I know I jumped in there, but
No, you're good.
I knew those, and I wanted. I think it's. I've been in a few churches. I don't know that we've had reasons why we've done things at previous churches, and so I wanted people to hear reasons why we've done some of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, like for me, I think that's one of the beautiful things about our church and about what we do is I honestly cannot think of anything that I would look at and say we don't have a reason for why we do that.
Yeah.
Everything that we do is intentional and thought through, and really that's probably one of the most important things inside of ministry is like if you're looking at doing ministry, having a purpose and a reason behind why you do everything that you do is massively important because it shows that there's intentionality there and it's not just like we're just throwing something against the wall and hoping it sticks.
Yeah. And sometimes that can be a reason. It just can't stay.
Sure.
That can't stay the reason.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So
Yeah,
what other things do you do to like prep and prepare the team and all that stuff?
Yeah. So kind of after we move in through, looking at our current songs, we kind of spend, and we're typically looking for new songs throughout the year and every single week. But after we've kind of looked at our current songs, we'll look at our current songs and say, okay, how are our fast songs doing? Our mid songs, slow song, like, do we have enough of each? Or are we trying to? Because we want to be able to have a good assortment of songs to be able to select from to build sets out and build effective sets. Because it's a lot harder to build sets when you have 25 slow songs and no fast songs or mid songs or anything like that. So we try to keep a decent rotation of of each, speed and energy level of songs, I guess is the best phrase for that. But so we'll look at that and say, okay, we're not doing so great in our mid songs. And most worship leaders will say fast songs are the hardest place to find songs. That is the hardest place. And so we are constantly looking for fast songs that we think can engage well. And so we'll look at, how are those different energy levels doing? And then we'll spend some intentional time over the next week or two looking for new songs, and we'll bring them into the meeting and we'll say, hey, this is a song that we feel like can do well. And then after we have said, hey, this is like one person will bring that in and say, hey, I think this song will do well. The entire team at that point, the worship team, the worship department will take a week and we'll listen through that list of songs. Okay. And we'll say, how do we, as myself, I think this song will do well. That's when I bring the song in. And then the team will look at it and say, the team says, hey, how do we think this song will do? And we'll rank those songs and we'll come back and we'll discuss which ones we felt like are going to do the best. Okay. And then from there we'll select that song, and at that point it kind of joins our rotation of songs.
What
Yeah.
what determines if a song's even allowed to be on that list?
Yeah, I mean, so the very first thing is theology. Is it theologically accurate? That is the first and most important thing that we look at. Does it line up with the Bible? That's the first and foremost thing. The second thing, there's really kind of like three things we look at is the theology of it, the singability of it. That's a big piece too. Is can people actually sing this song, or is it something that's going to be really challenging for them to be able to keep up with?
Yeah.
Typically, the faster the lyrics, the more challenging it is for people to sing. And so, if it is something that's faster or has a huge vocal range on it, chances are we may even it may be an incredibly powerful song. But if it's something that's challenging for our people to sing, it's probably not making it through because of that level. We want our people to engage with the songs on a. It's one thing to engage with it by listening to it in a worship setting, though. We want them to engage with it by singing and being able to use those songs to be able to worship God. And so singability is one, and then overall, musicality of it. Is it something that is going to people are going to enjoy hearing and enjoy singing to? Is it does it have a good hook? We call it that intro line or that chorus line. Is it something that when you walk out of church that day, are you still singing it in your head?
Yeah.
So we're looking for those types of songs.
There has been this, but there's been moments for me where I'm like, I don't know if I like this song, and then we do it for the first time, and I'm humming it on the way home, and I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe I like it more than I thought.
Yeah, and that's that level that we look at. We want those songs to be ones that people can sing to and pick up quickly, and to be able to like and enjoy hearing. Yeah, so that's kind of the level we look at for what songs we bring in.
Real quick, you said worship team, so it seems like you guys meet every week as a worship team.
Yep, every week.
So for our church, who's in this meeting? You can keep it generic, like obviously
Sure.
don't give me specific names, but
Yeah.
and then if it was another church that maybe doesn't have a full blown worship department, who would you like if that was you, who would you include into that?
Yeah, so for us, it's our worship leaders that are on staff. We also have our director of operations who kind of oversees the entire creative department. So he's a part of that, and then we do bring in, someone else, a different couple different people, just to have different perspectives. People that aren't hearing those songs literally every single day and every single week. We try to bring in some different, fresh perspectives. So that's how we do it. Honestly, though, if I was outside of Metro and it was just me kind of doing my own thing, like kind of in a worship world, didn't have a bunch of extra worship leaders, I would go to a couple of different people. I would go to some of my volunteers that may be my core people that serve pretty regularly, or maybe higher level leaders inside of our team. I would potentially go to our if there's a next gen person, someone that potentially can help speak into the next generation, see the things that they're listening to, they're hearing. I would talk to one group that we've really enjoyed getting to connect with a little bit and having some input in is our small group leaders.
Okay.
We've had that's actually been one really cool part, and a part of our process too is we'll go to our small group leaders and talk to them about the life of the church and what's going on in their groups, what's going on in their world, because they have a heartbeat on the church that we can't have. It's impossible for us to be able to know everything that's going on. So we talk to our small group leaders, the ones that are meeting with our people weekly, the ones that are connecting with them, and so those would be the people I would go to and say, hey, come in and talk with us about worship stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to add in too, because you brought up next gen, which is awesome that we would have that thought to make sure that we're staying fresh with the younger generation and continually passing it off. If you're listening, you may be thinking, well, what about the older generation? Remember, we talked about the gold songs. Like, we keep songs around. We don't get rid of them. We keep them around. So we take care of them too. So, yeah. Cool. All right. So next phase, so you got the songs and stuff. What happens after that?
Yeah, so once we've kind of picked our songs, we've gotten that out. We'll sit down, and we kind of have a system that we use in Google Sheets, where we have like a spreadsheet that has a lot of information in it for us to build off of effectively. So the information we typically have in there, we have the previous month's worship sets. We have our current song list and where they kind of rank on the same sheet. We have what series we're going into and kind of the topics we're talking about lined out right underneath the different weeks. We also have inside of those conversations with our small group leaders that we've been having, we take notes on those, and we put those notes, those things that are going on in the life of the church, we put those into that sheet as well, for us to be able to reference and talk about. And then we also have a week where a time inside of our meeting where we brainstorm different ideas of things that we think could engage people in worship, different doorways that we talked about earlier, those different doorways. We put those into that sheet as well.
Yeah, give me an example of what that would be. So
sure.
As they're having this meeting and they're like, okay, we need a doorway, what is one of those very practically in a service that might show up?
Yeah, so one of the doorways, there's a couple of different types that you can have. You can have some different musical types. You can have some different speaking types. You can have some different scriptural types, videos, things like that. But one that we used not too long ago was we had a moment where we did a song, and coming out of that song, it tied really, really well to the hymn "It Is Well," and it was tying really, really well as well to the series that we were in. But it didn't really come from the brainstorm of the series. It came from the brainstorm of worship ideas that we were looking at. So those brainstorming those doorways. We looked at the song we were doing and we said, hey, this actually would flow really, really well into "It Is Well." So let's hang on to that and look for a moment to potentially use that. And we talk about, well, we'll get that in a little bit, but that was one of those doorways, and so we keep that in a list of those potential options.
And it was a doorway.
Yeah,
it was very obvious.
Absolutely was.
Yeah,
that was a powerful moment.
It was like you could just see the audience kind of go, yes. It was pretty cool.
Almost like they had been hoping to have that happen.
Yeah,
I mean, it was really cool.
Yeah. So, all right. So you got doorways, talking through that, looking at the spreadsheet. Yep. Keep us going.
Yeah. So once we have all that information in there, we take a week and on our own, in the worship meeting, each of us plans worship sets for the entire month. So each of us plans 4 worship sets, and we fill out, if it's a 4-week month, if it's a 5-week month, obviously we do 5, but we all plan worship sets for the entire month. And then we come back together and we discuss our worship sets. We present them and we say, hey, here are the ideas that I had. And we talk about them. And really kind of the biggest and most important part inside of that is each of us comes in open-handed. We do everything we can to not hold on to our ideas and say, hey, this is my idea and it needs to be this. Because ultimately that ends up leading to frustration and tension and things like that. But we come in open-handed and we say, here are the ideas that I've got. And we discuss what do we think is the most powerful, what do we think is going to be the most effective in engaging our church in worship. And a lot of times what ends up happening is that we'll take a piece from one person's worship set and a piece from another person's worship set, and we kind of mash them together, and we find the most powerful that way. And we kind of build out our sets off of that, and then we'll go back and we'll look at and say, hey, are there any songs that we missed off of our worship set list that's like, hey, this song we haven't done in a while, and if we don't do it, we may lose it. Like, people may forget about it and the engagement may be gone. So let's try to see if we can't slot it in. But that's really kind of a last resort type piece. Mm-hmm. Is that level, is just making sure we have everything in. But yeah, that's kind of how we build our sets, and it's been really, really effective so far for us.
Very effective, because this has been going on for maybe a little over a year. Like, you've done elements of this for a long time, but this specific thing is maybe a year. And yes, I would say, because we did, if you want to check it out, it's one of the greatest worship message series I think I've ever been a part of. It was our Heart of Worship series, metrocommunitychurch.com. There you go. Plug it for everybody, but go to the archive or the on-demand stuff and go to Heart of Worship series. And since that moment, it was about 16 months ago. it's been much different. Like, we had good worship. It's been different.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It has been. And honestly, a lot of that it was kind of wild. Shortly after or shortly before that, we had made the adjustment to doing more team oriented worship sets. Before that, and I like, this would be something I'd say for the smaller church that maybe has just the worship leader. Anytime that you can bring multiple people into the process, it helps it. Like, I've been a part of the process where it was just me, or it was just one worship leader doing the worship sets, and I've been a part of the process where it's a team doing it. And by and large, there has not been a moment where I would say it was more effective to do it by myself. It was always more effective to do it as a team, because you've got more people bringing ideas. You've got more people that are seeing things. Our lead pastor talks about this a lot, is, when you're sitting in a room, you can only ever see 3 walls at a time. You've got to have more people that can see more walls. So having a team that can maybe be looking in a different direction than you are is always going to be more effective than trying to do it by yourself.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I welcome it too. There's so many. We do the 4 walls thing a lot. Like, we have created those elements a lot in our world. All right, so you've got your team, you've equipped them, you've got your set. I would even say this, because they may be asking. We do have boundaries within sets, because we know that every service is going to be, is it 75 minutes? Is that
Yep.
okay? So you and we know that the message is like 40 of it. So you have a limiter of 35 minutes. How do you navigate some of that when you're building these sets?
Yeah, so typically we try to actually gun for about 70 to 71 minutes, planned time. And so, we have the 40-minute message, and we typically know that we need about anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes for our welcome time, welcome and wrap up time. So right at the beginning and the end of the service. And so we typically plan our worship sets with the idea in mind that we have about 24 minutes of worship time. Now, there is a little bit of flexibility inside of that, because we know our maximum time that we try to go for is about 75 minutes. And so we plan our services at 71, knowing that if God's putting something on our hearts that's just incredibly powerful, and we need to go over a couple of minutes in our planning, we can do that, because we have the flexibility to do it.
Let's go there, because
sure.
That is often a pushback on. I have never been a part of a church that does the amount of preparation that we do for one weekend. Like, I mean, you may be thinking like, oh, is this for Easter? No, this is every single week. We do this every single week. I have not been a part of a church that does that to this level. And so you may be like, man, it sounds like you just are so structured and planned and prepared that there's no room for the Holy Spirit. But you just said we do actually plan for those moments. Could you flesh that out a little bit?
Yeah, so I actually have a belief, and Tim, you actually help me come to the understanding of this belief. The Holy Spirit moves in the preparation just as much as he does in the moment, and so we kind of land in a place of we follow the Holy Spirit always, and not just in the moment. But inside of that as well, we do want to leave space for the Holy Spirit to move in the moment as well. And so inside of our worship set planning, we typically try to factor in a couple of extra minutes inside of service, anywhere from 3 to 5 to 6, minutes, that we say, man, if the Holy Spirit's moving in this moment, we don't want to move on from it. We can do that. We can stay put and continue on in worship for a little while longer, because we want to let the Holy Spirit move where he sees fit to move.
Could you give us an example of a moment that may have happened within this?
Yeah, actually, so we had a moment this weekend where that happened. And so I was leading the song "Something Has to Break," and it was the end of the worship set. And it didn't happen in every service. It was only in the 10:45 service that this happened in. But our people were they were in it, and they were engaged in worship. Something about that 10:45, maybe it's the extra hour of sleep or so that they get, I don't know. But it is,
They were
it's
closer to partying for New Year's.
That's right. Exactly right. That's what it is. So we we had this moment, and our people were engaged in worship, and we said, I in the moment I made the call. I was like, we need to sit in this for a little bit longer. And so we kind of sat there and we sang a little bit more. I did a couple little leading moments. But man, it was powerful because it wasn't something that we planned to do. It was just in the moment we were seeing the Spirit move. People were engaged in worship, and we said we want to sit inside of this. And so we had our we call it our MD, our music director. He was on the keys this weekend, and we all felt it. And so we sat there for a minute. We had planned for me to pray to move into the message, and I didn't pray because I felt that moment. And our MD caught it and was like, "Hey, we need to sit in this." And so he was giving us some different call outs and saying, "Hey, we're gonna build it up here. We're gonna continue on." And so we did. We sat in that for another 2 or 3 minutes and did a little bit extra worship time, and just praising God in that time. And then we moved in after that. At the end of it, we felt it come down, and then moved into prayer.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
So both, you can do both.
absolutely, you can do both.
And we,
The Holy Spirit moves always, not just in one time.
yeah, and we do plan. We literally plan for the Holy Spirit to do something.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you can.
It's an expectant. We
Yeah.
expect the Holy Spirit to move, and so literally every week, sorry, literally every week we factor in time for the Holy Spirit to move because we're expectant that He's going to show up and move.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which I think is cool. And once again, getting ridiculously planned and prepared allows extra time for that to happen rather than just going in and going, let's see what happens.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. 100%.
All right.
Yep.
So any other meetings that would happen on a worship team level throughout the week, beyond what you've already said?
Yeah. So typically we do have one other meeting that happens just on a preparation level. We have I meet with our comms director and our production director after we finish up building our sets, and by this point we're typically about a month out from the first service we planned. So again, looking at say January 1, we finish building our sets for the month of February. January 1, I'm meeting with our comms director and our production director and saying, hey guys, here are our sets for the month of February. Here's our heartbeat behind them. What it does is it allows them to prepare and to build out lighting builds or media builds, or and sometimes we've actually had some moments where they've come back and they've said, hey, that's awesome, have you actually thought about this too, that we think this could help too, and they've been able to speak into that as well. So even taking it outside of just the worship department, allowing other departments that have hands on the worship service to speak into it as well has been cool. So that's probably the only other meeting that really factors into the worship sets. We do get some ideas and things. Talking about those doorways again, we do have some ideas that typically come to us from our creative department, but that's not typically stepping into the worship meeting.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. So you've prepared for January 1, you've got February prepared. So let's just assume it's the week of that first week of February. What happens? Like, do you have a rehearsal leading into that week? What happens at that rehearsal? What happens in preparation of the actual Sunday service? Like, how do you lead up to actually accomplishing or stepping in and seeing it actually flesh out in flesh and bone in real life? And here we go.
Yeah. So it actually kind of starts even a little bit before that. Okay. Before the week of, throughout, once we get our sets built, we put them into Planning Center. And Planning Center is what we use to communicate to all of our teams. So that's where our schedule goes. That's where our services go. That's where any files that we need our team to be able to look at goes. All of those things go to Planning Center. It's a phenomenal tool, allows us to, do whatever we need to as far as communication goes in one place. And so it all goes there. And so once the sets are into Planning Center, we're going through each song and making sure each song has an MP3 of that song for our team to be able to practice with, a chord chart for them to be able to practice with. For our vocalists, we actually have, we call it our vocal parts breakdown, but basically, we break down each individual song and we say, hey, this is who we want to sing in this spot. So like if it's we want the lead vocalist to sing only in verse one, and then in the chorus we want the alto part to join in, or whatever it looks like. So breaking down each individual song, and making sure our vocalists know when they're singing and at what part they're going to be singing, whether they're on the melody or the harmony, whatever it may be. So we make sure that's on there. And then one of the other things new that we've been doing over the last probably, I don't know, 8-9 months, is we've been going in and we've been taking each song and finding. So we use Ableton to build out our worship sets. And Ableton, what it does is it's tracks, and it allows each individual part to be able to be turned up or turned down inside of a song. And so we put all the tracks in together, and we turn up each individual person's part louder than the rest. So like if I'm making a track for the drums, I'm going to turn the drums track up higher than the rest of the music, so it allows the drummer to be able to listen in to their part specifically in the context of the entire song.
Okay.
And so each song has that inside of there. So we do it for drums, acoustic, bass, electric, all that kind of stuff. And it does take some time. But one of the things we found is that the preparation and the work to put in has massively benefited our team, because it allows them to be more excellent in hearing their parts and be able to practice them well.
When you do that, does it, like, so if, let's say we do it for a song, you talked about something has to break. So let's just assume that song, when you do that for a song and then you send it out, the next time you do that song, does it leave, like, do you have to do it again, or does it like save it as the drums are up, the bass is up? Does it save it for you?
Yeah, it saves it. So
Okay.
we typically attach that to the song itself,
Okay.
as opposed to the plan for that weekend.
So
And so anytime we bring it in, it's already ready.
so there's front end work, but then
Yes.
it's there for however long you use the song. Yeah.
Yep, and it doesn't have to be redone every single time. Like
Yeah.
it can just be once we bring in a new song and we put those files in there, it's ready to roll.
Yeah.
And it just stays there. So, yep. So that's once all that stuff's in Planning Center, we build out our Ableton files, which we talked about just a second ago. That's our tracks. That's what we kind of use to help fill out our stuff. It helps our team stay on tempo. It helps them know where they're at inside of the song. It gives different call outs, things like that throughout the worship set. We build that out for the entire set, and then we put that into Planning Center. And so throughout the weeks leading up to when they're serving, our teams be able to practice at home almost exactly like they're going to be doing the service on the weekend. They're going to hear the same things that they're going to hear in their ears on the weekend. The only real thing that's a little bit different is that they're not going to hear, Chandler Moore's voice singing. They're going to hear us on the weekend. Yeah. That's who they're singing. That's really the only difference there. And so we put that in there. We try to typically stay about 3-4 weeks out on that, so that they have plenty of time to practice with it. And if we ever have to make an adjustment, because they've been practicing with it, if there's a small tweak or something that needs to happen, it's not like we're, giving it to them the week of. Like there's been a couple of weeks where, a vocalist or something gets sick on Thursday or Friday, and we have to adjust a key for something. But because they've already been practicing the song, it's a lot easier for them to make one key adjustment on Thursday or Friday than it is for them to get the worship set on Thursday or Friday and have to learn it all on their own. So that's been a big piece. And then the other piece that we do is we have a talk through video that we do where the worship leader that built the set will talk through the actual set and tell them, hey, here's some things to look out for. Make sure that you're watching for this when you're practicing. And then we also get to share the heartbeat of why we picked the songs we did, how this ties into the series that we're speaking on, all those different things. And so that's been a really cool thing too, to get to share our heartbeat behind it with our team.
Yeah. So you're letting the team know the doorways that you're trying to provide for people, which includes an entire team. So everyone leading on a stage has the opportunity to help usher people into doorways with God. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they know it weeks in advance. And so they're praying over it, they're practicing it, they're getting themselves ready, their hearts ready to lead those moments.
And there's an anticipation. I would say that's a massive switch that has happened. Is we walk into every weekend truly believing God is already moving, and we're just going to see Him move again. Rather than going, I wonder if God's going to move today. We walk in going, okay, we already know He's doing it. How are we going to see Him do it today?
And I mean, there have been numerous moments where like we plan out a moment, and like in the moment planning it out, you get those chills where you're like, holy cow, this is going to be nuts. And then you get to the rehearsal in the week, and it's like, holy cow, this is going to be like, it just builds and builds. Like there's been some moments inside of a rehearsal where we go to practice a moment, and like I'll kind of tease the team a little bit, and I'll cut it off before we hit the moment. I'll be like, nope, you know what's coming, and I want you to save that big moment of like that high energy for the weekend. Like I don't want you actually getting it now. Hang on to it. I know they hate it. Every time I do it, they're like, I hate this.
I would too.
Worst. I
want to speak to the tracks because I've been at smaller churches where we've had to walk through the track situation, and do you not? We are a church of over 1,000. I don't think we've hit 2,000 yet, but we're a church of over 1,000. We have full worship teams almost every week. Like even at my location, we're a campus of a little over 200. We'll have 5 to 6 people on stage in worship every week, and we still use tracks. I think I'm just going to speak for myself. It was a little bit weird at first for me. It was a little bit awkward, but I would say it's dramatically enhanced. Like you get through that initial weirdness, and then you get to a place where there's comfort, and it enhances everything that you're doing. And so even if you're a smaller church, I don't care if you just have like an acoustic guitar or just a piano. You can turn on and turn off every instrument.
Yep.
I would play with it because I think it would add value. It adds more value than you might think.
And kind of speaking to it from like the musical side of it, you look at a song like Glorious Day by Passion. They have inside of that song, there's about 14 guitars that are playing at the time. You're not going to be able to have that throughout on stage on a weekend. And if you do, you've already got all this figured out. Like that's not something that you're having to work through. But one of the things we found is that you may be able to have a full team, but it's really challenging to be able to match the musicality of the song that you're playing, because they did it in a studio or they did it on on like in a concert, and they had these tracks that they recorded in a studio and put in. And so what it allows you to do is it allows you to get a little closer to the sound of the original song a little bit better. And like you said, you do have the flexibility to be able to turn tracks on and off. So like we never have our drum tracks on a weekend unless we don't have a drummer and we really feel like that song needs it. We'll turn it on.
That would probably be more my location than your, but yeah.
And so we typically never have those drum tracks on. If we have a bass player, we don't have our bass tracks on. If we have a keys player, we don't have our keys track on. All those different things. But in the event that something happens and we don't have a keys player, we still get to have our keys parts in there, and because those are in the tracks.
I would even say,
we always are very intentional to kind of mix them into where it's not like, holy cow, I hear the piano, and you're looking around for the piano. We have other instruments playing that help fill it out. So
correct, and I do think the other benefit that it's provided is you guys as lead, like your lead vocalist generally, and a lot of times you're playing an instrument as well. But if you click it on, it allows that you don't have the freedom to just lead and not worry about an instrument. So there are opportune moments where turning it on is beneficial to just free up your worship leader to just focus on leading worship rather than playing an instrument.
Very practical moment in the side of that. The lead line for Gratitude is all from acoustic guitar, and I don't have the brain capacity to be able to play that lead line and sing the song at the same time. And so like you said, it absolutely frees me up to be able to lead effectively and still have the song sound as close to the original as possible.
Cool. Well, what else do you do in preparation or rehearsal or whatever?
Yeah, so moving into the week of, we kind of get to our rehearsal time, and at our rehearsal, we are very intentional with our terminology, in that we don't call it practice.
Okay.
It is not a Wednesday practice; it is Wednesday rehearsal, because there's difference between practice and rehearsal. Practice is you're coming in and you're figuring out your parts, you're figuring out how to play the things that you have. Rehearsal is you're coming in, you spent the time at home on your own practicing, and we're in the moment figuring out how to do this as a team, rather than each individual person trying to figure out how to do it on their own. And so, we're coming in, and most everybody's got their stuff down. They know how to play their stuff. They know how to practice, or they know how to play the songs. And then if there is something that they hear that's a little bit different, it allows for a small tweak to enhance it and make it better, rather than having to wholesale learn the song in the moment.
Yeah.
And so we're very intentional with that terminology to call it rehearsal. And so at the rehearsal, we spend a couple minutes at the beginning of the rehearsal getting our in-ear mixes, and that's just kind of what we hear to be able to hear each other on such a big stage with a lot of stage noise and the speakers being out front. It just makes it a lot easier for us to be able to hear. So we use in-ear monitors. Some churches use floor wedges, and so we spend that time kind of getting what we are going to hear working properly and sounding what we need to be able to do our stuff effectively. So we do that first, and then we move into rehearsing each individual song. And so if we got 4 songs, we do 1 song and then we stop. We'll talk about it, make sure everybody has what they need. If there were any spots that need to be tweaked, we'll talk about that, and then we'll go on to the next song. And then we'll do the same thing. So all 4 songs, we're stopping in between, we're talking about it, making sure everybody has what they need ears wise, and on a execution of the song level. We do that. And then at the end of that, after we go through all of our songs, we'll stop. We'll say, okay, let's talk through our transitions between songs, make sure that we know what's coming. If we have not already run them in the front half. And then we go back to the very beginning of service, and we basically run it like we would on a weekend. We start and we go top to bottom. If we have welcome music, we're playing through the welcome music. If we have wrap up music, we're playing the wrap up music. We're playing through the transitions at the end of each song, and doing the song as well. So we're literally basically running our service top to bottom. And then once we finish that, we will spend some time in prayer over the service, over each other. We talked about we always try to share. I've been trying to say this a lot more recently. Is we talk about we want to be a praying church, and if we're not praying for each other as a team, then we're not doing that effectively. And so we are very intentional to spend some time in prayer over each other and over the church and over the service of what's coming up. And just kind of getting our hearts right as we go into the rest of the weekend. And then after rehearsal, I will get together with the production director and our comms director, who's kind of overseeing everything. Excuse me. And we'll talk about if there's anything we heard or saw that needs to be addressed with a team member, because we really don't like to try to do if there is something that somebody's messing up or struggling with, we don't like to try to do that in the moment, because we don't like to embarrass people. That's not what we want to do. We will take note of it, and if we can address it very kindly in the moment, we try to. But if it's something that's just like, yeah, this is gonna probably embarrass them, we'll talk about it, and then we'll go have a conversation with them outside of that. And one of the things that's been really beneficial inside of those conversations is we don't really have to do it off of, I think this sounded bad, or I think I heard this. We've been able to, we record every single rehearsal, whether it's via video, like just setting up an iPhone, or, full scale, recording it from the soundboard. We record every rehearsal. And so once we've taken our notes, we can actually go back to that spot that we were hearing with the team member that we're addressing it with and say, hey, you hear this spot right here? That's a little bit different than what we're trying to go for. So let's talk through that. Let's work through that together, and make sure that we get it to where we want it. But we have to spend that time on outside of, rehearsal to make sure we do it effectively. Yeah. And then from there, that's pretty much the preparation up until we actually get to the day of weekend.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know
So,
weekends, it looks similar to what you just said.
yep.
So you go through, you do all the checking, ear monitor, all
Hmm.
that stuff, and then
Hmm.
you'll run through the whole service. Are there any? I know you guys do like a huddle. Talk about the
Yes.
huddle time.
Yeah. So I love our huddle times. It's one of my favorite things because it's kind of a time. So we in the worship world, there's always this like disconnect between worship and production. There's like, there's that like they're in the booth or they're, somewhere else and we're on stage, and there's like this I don't know, it's a weird dichotomy between the two of us where we just like we're just separate. And so I love the huddle because it gets rid of that. We all come, so the worship and production team, we all come together and we talk through service. And we do all the details checks and make sure everybody knows what's coming, go through the order of it. And then we get to spend a little bit of time getting our hearts right. Literally day of, we're, an hour before service because we're getting ready to run it. And we take some very intentional time to get our hearts right. And we do that in a couple different, like I've got a list of different things that I like to do to get our hearts right. But really kind of the biggest one is just spending some time in prayer, either in groups or spread out on our own, or, we've done some worship times, things like that, where it's just, we're singing through a song together. One really fun one that we do is we'll do a get to know you. And then we'll spend some time in prayer with that person that you got to know, whether it's, someone from production or someone from worship. We do a little bit of that kind of stuff there too. And so those have been really fun times, and we get to share wins. We get to share the things that are happening in the church inside of our huddles. We get to share things going on in life that are challenging. But really, like the goal inside of the huddle is to transition us from the rest of the week and what's happening in our lives and our own personal lives to let's focus in and see what God's going to do this weekend.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because I knew what you meant when you say get your hearts right. But
Yeah,
just so if you're listening, it's not like, hey, we've been sinning and just who cares all
right,
week, and then it's like,
right,
oh no,
yeah,
I'm about to lead worship. I should
yeah,
probably make sure I'm good with God.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
it's that in that moment we're trying to go, okay, we've had a week, we've been navigating it with God. We're about to enter into a different space, and we got to make sure we're ready to enter into this space because we're leading people into this space with us. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a good clarification.
Yeah.
That is absolutely our heartbeat. So we're focusing in on where we need to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of our huddle time. One that and I don't, if it's okay with you, I just, I want to share you kind of what we did this past weekend. So
Yeah.
there's a book. My sister got it for me for Christmas this year.
Hmm.
Actually, no, was it Chris? No, she got it it was our baby shower because we just had
Okay.
a baby not too long ago.
Yeah.
And so she got me this book, and it's called Every Moment Holy.
Okay.
And it is liturgies for literally almost every moment you can think of in life that's just like
Okay.
a mundane moment.
Okay.
And so I took our team through one this weekend, and it's funny because you hear the name of it and you're like, that doesn't make sense for this. So it's called a liturgy for the changing of a diaper. And as I just alluded to, I've been doing that a lot recently.
Yeah. Yep.
And so this one, it basically what it's talking about is, you look at the changing of a diaper as kind of like just, it's another thing you got to do to check off a list and to make sure that the thing keeps moving forward and like he's healthy and he's not, you're just sitting in a dirty diaper. It's just like, it's kind of like a mundane task. It's a little thing. But what this liturgy talks about is it says, in the changing of a diaper, God still moves. God still uses that for his good and for his glory. And that it talks about the very last thing is God used this changing of a diaper to establish grace and love inside of a heart.
Mm.
Set this upstream for the changing of a heart, and then set that changing of a heart upstream for the changing of the world.
Mm.
And it's that little thing, that little task that we may see as mundane, that shows love and grace to this child, that may show them love, and that they may be able to use that love for God's glory down the road to see the world change. And so we used that, and we talked about, serving on the weekend. What someone may be doing on the weekend, they may see as just a small piece, a small little thing. A bass player may see, oh, I'm just playing bass. It's not like I'm up leading or anything. But that little thing, God may use to change someone's heart, and ultimately someone's heart may change that can help change the world. And so it's using all the little things. Someone in production that's pushing the space bar to advance the slides, God's going to use that to for His honor, for His glory, and ultimately, hopefully, see the world change.
Yeah, I know if they don't advance the slides, that you'll hear plenty of hearts about that.
100%. 100. I love the media person. They're my favorite person as a worship leader.
They're more critical than they may want to think.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah.
Well, cool. All right, so you have the worship service. You're doing all that. We talked through a lot of the practicalities of just navigating it and things like that. Do you do anything following a service to kind of look back and go, did that do what we wanted it to do?
Yes, absolutely. Every Monday, inside of our we call it our execution meeting, and it's basically just how do we execute the service, things like that. Every single week, every single week we look back at the previous week's service, and we say, did this accomplish what we had it set out to do? Now, the important part inside of that is you have to have a reason and a purpose in why you did it, to be able to actually assess whether or not it was effective.
Yeah.
If you're just doing stuff because you like the song, then yeah, you accomplished your goal because you did a song you liked. But if your goal is to see people engage in worship that is authentic, then you have a different assessment of it in the post assessment. So in execution meeting, we sit down and we talk about, was this effective? And really kind of our model, our framework for that is our transcendent framework, which I know you said you're going to be talking about that here soon. But One of the biggest things that we look at, we have a couple of different tiers of things that we think are the most important for us to be able to see happen, and for transcendence, and for that engaging service, that engaging worship to have happened. And the first top two that are most important, they're the only two in tier one, are, was it biblical and was it authentic? If those two things didn't happen, then we did not hit our goal. We did not hit the mark. And then we have quite a few underneath that. Were there clear next steps for people to be able to take? Was there a moment of prayer? Because ultimately we want to, in every service, spend time talking to God. Like that's a massive part of the Christian faith, and what we do is spending time with God. And so was there a moment inside of service where we spend time in prayer and talking to God? Multiple different things there as well. Those ones off the top of my head, but those are our assessment tools. We have to have the assessment tools. We have to have a goal in mind to be able to truly assess whether or not it worked. And then it allows us to, if it worked, we know that we're heading in a good direction, and we can do slight adjustments if we need to, if there were little things that we didn't hit. But if it was really far off, it allows us to course correct as well. But we have to have that goal in place first to be able to truly gun for what we're looking for.
Yeah, I want people to hear that, like, the main two items of assessment are not, did we play the song correctly? That's important.
Sure. Yep.
But if it was biblical and we were in an authentic moment and the song didn't quite land like we hoped, we still viewed it as a success. Yep. Because it was authentic. Like, people were in it, even though we messed up as a musician or as a vocalist, or it was still authentic. It's still biblical. We nailed it. Now we might need to clean up some other things, but we absolutely got to the place we were trying to get to. Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that's critical, because we're not going for perfection. We are going for moments with God. We're going for transcendent moments with God. And you can have that in your screw ups, which is,
Yep.
That should be
Yeah.
encouraging to all of us.
Freeing,
Yeah.
honestly. Like
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with volunteers where they're stressing over a part, and I look at them like, listen, I'm not looking for perfection.
Yeah.
I'm looking for you to authentically worship in this moment.
Yeah.
And it's like you can see the weight come off their shoulders where they're just like, man, that's so freeing. Like I can just worship. And a lot of times what it does, because they end up doing their part better because the stress is off. Like it's not stressful anymore. They're able to actually step into worship, and when they do that, the stress of I got to do this perfectly comes off, and they do it more effectively than they would have if they were stressing about getting it perfect.
Yep. I agree with
Yeah.
that. Let me check my notes real quick.
Yeah.
Make sure I got everything here. Did you share all the software and programs that you use? Planning Center Online, Ableton. Is there anything else that people might want to check out that could equip them or help them?
Sure. Yeah. Probably really the only other one. And this is kind of, we use this more on a collaboration spot. And so if you're collaborating with people, Monday.com
Okay.
is one that we use pretty regularly. It allows me to keep track of the different things that are going on that I have to have meetings with people about. It also allows me to go through a schedule with our team. So in our building of our Abletims, like I talked about, we have deadlines for the different things that are happening. I can set deadlines inside of that for our team to be able to hit. And then it allows me to keep track of, hey, are we hitting those things? Are we hitting the deadlines? It allows me to put a checklist inside of there for our team to be able to make sure, hey, did I hit all my checklist items to make sure that this is, we have all the resources we need for our team. So yeah, Monday is one that we use a lot. Has been effective. Yeah, Planning Center Services. Really, and Planning Center Services had a couple of different aspects to it. The media aspect, that's kind of where we have our videos for our talk throughs. That's where we have our Abletons is inside of media. Yeah, I mean those are pretty much the biggest ones that we use as far as communicating to our team and then keeping on track with our process and all that. So yeah.
Cool. Any further thoughts or wisdom from you on getting to a worship weekend service and planning for it?
Yeah, so I would say probably my biggest nugget that I would leave people with is uh, if you are not spending time in prayer over your service before as a worship leader, not just like not trying to lead your team in it, but like if you are not as a worship leader spending time in prayer over your service, you're not going to be able to lead it effectively. If you're not spending time with God over your service, you're not going to be able to lead it effectively. And then I would even double down on that. If you're not worshiping outside of the weekend service, you're not going to be an effective worship leader. It is way more challenging for you to step into something to lead that you have not been doing already. I use this this story. I've used it a couple of times inside of our huddles. But it was actually while I was still at your campus leading out there that as I was the worship leader out there, there was a Sunday where we had it had frosted over that morning. My car was frosted over, my windshield was frosted over, and I couldn't see out of it. And I was like, well, if I don't leave now, I'm going to be late to get there to start, getting everything set up. And that's my struggle in time management. But nonetheless, that's so I was looking at this windshield. I'm like, I cannot see out of this thing. I don't have time to sit there and let it frost over, and I don't have an ice scraper in my car. So I've got to figure this thing out. So I was like, you know what? I have made this drive to church so many times. Like I can make it there. I had this like little hole where it just started to thaw out the windshield, and I was like, I think I can get there with that. Like I can make it. I've done this plenty of times. I know where the turns are. I know where the different stop signs are. And it's 6 a.m, so not many people are out on the road at that point in time. And so I was like, I think I can make it there. And so I made the drive over there. I made all the turns. The hole got a little bit bigger as I drove, but not much. And so I drove all the way to church. Couldn't really see where I was going, but I say all that. I share that story because a lot of times worship leading is like that. If you have not been there, if you have not made that drive, if you have not worshiped and spent time in worship so often that you can get to worship without knowing where you're going, or it's not like, it's not like second nature to step into worship, then you're not gonna be able to lead effectively. You need to have been spending so much time in worship outside of, the weekend service, that stepping into worship and leading worship on the weekend is like second nature. You can do it without actually knowing where you're going. You can do it without seeing where you're going. And so that is absolutely probably the most effective and most important piece of information, or most important thing, encouragement I can leave anybody that's listening to this with.
Yeah. Good. Alrighty, man. Well, I appreciate you sharing all that with us. It's I think it's going to be really encouraging and equipping for people to,
I hope so,
just know, because this can be just even for the person sitting in the chair or in the pew and going like, I think it's helpful to go, there's intentionality and there's thought process with probably, at least to some level, with every single church out there. And that it's not just, we're not just trying to throw it together. We take seriously the fact that we are about to collectively and collaboratively walk into the throne room of God together and worship as his people. And we want to be intentional about it. And so I hope it's
an encouragement.
That. Yeah.
Yeah, and the encouragement for someone that may be looking for a process to say, hey, because our process works for us and we've kind of refined it and been working on it for a while, but our process may not be the same one that works for you.
Yep.
And so finding your process that works best is always going to be the most important thing.
It's going to be different in Midwest Illinois than it is in West Coast, probably South, like it's overseas for sure. And so take the elements, like there's commonalities that you can just kind of go, we can take our version of that one, take the commonalities and do where God, do it to where God's leading you to have transcendent moments with God in your context. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Cool, man. Well, appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Happy to do it.
Yep. See you tomorrow.
Yeah. Sounds good. See you, man.
All right. Bye. Travis does an amazing job. I know there was plenty of content there to learn. Take the principles that work for you in your context, in your church, and apply them. We can all grow a little bit. We can all learn from each other. If you have suggestions that maybe we could learn from, something that you do at your church or that you've seen done, please comment. We want to learn. We want to be teachable. We want to grow. Many of the things that we've applied, we've seen aspects of that from other churches. We have not arrived. We want to learn. So feel free to comment back and help us understand maybe something that we've missed a little bit or that we could do better. We would welcome that. Thank you so much for checking this video out. As we continue this series on planning a weekend, we're going to look at the communication side and creativity and how to focus everything through one common vision and model. And we're going to look at a lot of different aspects, even to the level of planning events, like bigger events on a weekend and guest experience and things like that. So make sure you're checking these out over the next few episodes. Looking forward to having you, and I'll see you next time.